Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this edition of the Q-Dog Sportsnet podcast. Today I'm joined by multifaceted sportscaster for Turner Sports and CBS, Mr. Ryan Eagle. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Quinn. Great to be with you. Appreciate you having me on.
So, like I always like to do with all my guests, I like to ask, how did you get your start in sports broadcasting?
Ooh, what do we have? About 30 minutes? I can give you about a 29-minute answer and get right to it. It's a long process. I had a dream of doing this at the age of 8. I told my parents that I wanted to do it. Each of them told me, then that's what you'll do. They were very empowering and believing in me and planting a seed of confidence and conviction that I could one day do it. They said, you're going to have to get rid of your lazy S. And I said, what lazy F? I had no idea at that point that I had a lisp. So I worked on it for about 2 weeks with my father's tape recorder, and the lazy S was gone, and a career was born in 1977. The reality is, I didn't do anything about it other than uh, thought about it and paid attention to broadcasters. There was no avenue in which I could do it. I didn't have a high school radio station. There was no internet. I didn't have a microphone at home. What I did was I had an imagination and I had a goal and objective. I went to Syracuse to study it, got involved in broadcasting right away, and then there are many, many other instances that took place that gave me an opportunity to do more and to do something different and to try something. People that believed in me along the way. And here we are all these years later in 2024. I'm an old man and I've been doing it a long time.
Yeah, and I know you went to Syracuse. I know that journalism program is really excellent, and I've heard many people talk about it. So, in terms of in terms of sportscasting, is there any memorable calls that you've had throughout your career, like one or two from? Because I know you cover football and basketball, that you enjoyed the most, like listening to or playing back.
Yeah, I've got a lot of calls that are in the memory bank, and I think there are going to be a bunch of calls in my future that I don't even know about yet that I'm excited for. The way I approach the job is every game that I do, I think there's a chance that I'm going to see something that I've never seen before. So that means I've got to be ready for it. I have to rise to the occasion. I have to meet the moment. I have to be prepared for the moment, and I have to live in the here and now, which I continue to do. Starting next week, I have the NBA and NFL coinciding. So I have a lot of games coming up. That's often 5 games in a week. And every game still has to be fresh. And every game means something to someone, no matter if it's on a local channel, on a network, on radio, on TV. It doesn't matter. I treat them all with the importance that they deserve. Recently, I called the Kansas City San Francisco Super Bowl last year for the World Feed and got to call Patrick Mahomes to McCole Hardman for the touchdown to win it. That's going to go down as one of the great Super Bowls of all time. And I had the fortunate opportunity to be there in Las Vegas to work it. The NCAA championship this past year that aired on TBS, UConn continuing its dominance. That whole Final Four with Zach Edey, a part of it with Purdue and Alabama and NC State and UConn, that's going to go down as a thrill. I have a bunch of calls from way back when I did the world feed for the NBA Finals, Chicago Bulls, Utah Jazz, Michael Jordan's last shot as a member of the Chicago Bulls, a little fend off on Brian Russell against the Jazz in Salt Lake City, makes the jump shot in game 6. Utah has a last gasp at the end, can't get it done. Bulls win the championship. That's 6 for Jordan, and it ended up being his final moment as a Chicago Bull. We didn't know it at the time. There was some speculation, but that's going to go down historically as one of the best events I ever worked. But there are countless ones, Quinn. I'm very, very lucky that I've been doing this for as long as I have. 31 years. This will be now in the NBA. 27 years working NFL games. College basketball is 26 years. So the years are accumulating, and that means my bandwidth for the amount of information I can keep in my head is starting to shrink. But There are a whole lot of games in there and a whole lot of memorable moments.
Yeah, because I remember watching that Super Bowl because my family and I are Chiefs fans, even though as a journalist I try to be a little more balanced with like
Yes.
the teams and stuff. But just watching the game, I remember on CBS and stuff, like it was a really exciting Super Bowl,
Yeah,
and there was like even the other Super Bowls Chiefs have been in, like they're one of the Eagles. That was a really close one,
it
and there's
was.
so many moments. Like the scores like going back and forth between the 49ers and the Chiefs.
Yeah, I
Pretty
worked that one as well. I did that one in Glendale, Arizona with Charles Davis, my broadcast partner. So the world feed, the way that it works, Quinn, is that's going to air in any other English speaking country other than the United States. So it does air around the globe, just not in the US, but it gets you the chance to be there, to be a part of it. And you're right, it was really special.
Yes. So in terms of like, what are, is there like a certain sport that, I know you, of course you cover many sports, but is there any differences between like when you're going into a football versus a basketball game, that kind of a different mindset, and how does that work?
Yeah, the pace of the sport is different. Football is very much regimented towards TV because you run a play, the play is over, you run a replay or two replays. There's a natural place for the analyst to jump in to set up the next play, and you put that on wash, rinse, repeat. Basketball, the action can be end to end. You may get very few stoppages. It might be herky jerky. It might be really smooth. You have to be ready for both. NBA, there's a lot of scoring. So that means, as a play by play announcer, you're constantly coming up with new ways to describe what you're seeing. College basketball, not as much scoring, but maybe there's a sense of some team ball and the coach is controlling it a bit more as opposed to NBA, where you have the most gifted players in the world going at it and they're playing above the rim and they're making a high percentage of threes and they're going behind the back and you're seeing highlights and razzle dazzle. College basketball sometimes can be a rock fight, but when you get into a higher level like UConn and what we saw in the Final Four, I thought Alabama played at a very high level as well. Purdue was an excellent team. NC State was on a incredible run in that tournament just to stay alive every single round. So it's just a different atmosphere. Football, you're talking about 70, 75,000 fans in a stadium, could be a dome, could be outside. So you might be dealing with the elements. Basketball, NBA, usually 19,000 fans are into it, but they're not living and dying with every basket. College basketball, it might be a bit more intimate. There might only be 13,000 fans, but they're right on top of you and you can feel their energy and rooting for the school that you call your own makes it very visceral in a way. Your emotions are tied to the action. And I try to ride the wave of that with every event that I'm covering. I think part of the job as a play by play announcer is not only to just call the play, that's obvious, but it's also to give the viewer or the listener a sense of the event, a feel for the environment and what they're experiencing. Are you a conduit for what's happening on the site to someone that's watching in their living room? Or now, as we know, plenty of people are watching on their phones in a coffee shop, in their car. They probably shouldn't be driving and watching, but some people do. And that's your job. Your job is to help tell the story and impart the emotion of the event that you're covering.
That is so true because I also learned from a podcast listening to that also like yes, the emotion matters, also the cadence for a
Yep.
broadcaster also matters. So in terms of how do you build that up? Like building your cadence.
Yeah, that's done through trial and error. You have to do games in order to get to that place. It's based on experience. So the more games that you do, the better feel and sense you have for how to handle situations. The more reps that you get, the more repetition that you get, the better you are to feel comfortable in how to use your voice, how to inflect, how to pause, how to let the crowd tell the story where you don't have to give the words. The pictures can do most of the talking. So that's a constant process. It doesn't matter how many years you're in the business, doesn't matter how many games that you've worked, how many broadcasts that you've banked. Every game is a challenge unto itself. It's a situation where you've got to use your instincts and your expertise in the moment to try to make the best possible decision because you don't get to hit backspace. You don't get to hit delete. You don't get a second chance. You get one shot to do this. And I love that part of it. It's a tightrope, which I really enjoy. And you have to be okay with the idea that you're going to give it your best shot. You're going to learn from it. And then the next time you face a similar situation, you're hopefully going to adjust and be even better in the moment.
Yeah, that is totally 100% true because my one of my professors always says like for your book, like we can't restage an event. An event cannot be
No.
restaged. It's only one shot, one opportunity, and that's all you get. You got to do your best for the opportunity to present itself.
Yeah, I would quote Eminem on that. It is one shot, one opportunity. Maybe your hands are sweaty, but the the drama of the event will hopefully carry you and your ability to tell a story because ultimately that's what you're doing. You're reporting on what you're seeing and you're helping to tell the story of that game or of that athlete or of that coach or of that team or of that fan base. That's the job. And I think the ones that can best get to the place that help you understand what's happening and put it in perspective and context are the ones that usually have the most success. It's about proper phraseology, it's about understanding the moment. And then this is another secret weapon it's about reading the room, recognizing what's important, what's priority in that moment. 10 things might happen on a play. Can you pick the one or two things that are most important to impart to the viewer or listener?
Yes. So now that we talked about broadcasting, I'd like to go into some more like storylines of like the seasons for like
Sure.
NFL fully kicked into gear. What are some storylines you've been noticing throughout the season that might continue on, like in terms of like trades or players or just things that are going on?
Well, I think with the NFL, what we've learned is every single year, someone emerges, a team emerges that maybe you didn't expect or you didn't have high hopes for. And flip it to the other side, there are teams that you thought would perform at a certain level and fall short. This particular year, Minnesota has absolutely captured my attention. I had their game earlier this season against Houston. They're really well coached. They have great personnel. They've dealt with injuries, they've handled them. Sam Darnold is at a place in his career where he's playing with confidence. He's not playing with fear. He's not putting undue pressure on himself. He's performing at the level that they need him to perform at to be a leader and someone that they can rely on. But it's not all on his shoulders. And I think he feels that. He feels the framework of the team and the idea that it's not on one individual. Houston last year was that team in 2023. They surprised everybody. So now you wonder, were they a one hit wonder or is this for real? We're learning that it's for real. Their quarterback is for real with CJ Stroud. Their head coach is for real with D'Amico Ryans. And even though they're dealing with injuries at the running back position, they've had to deal with it now at the wide receiver spot. They keep maintaining a certain level and they've proven to be very resilient. Kansas City still head and shoulders above everybody else. Who will be the team that can step in and truly challenge them? Deals have been made. Buffalo trying to get better. The Jets are trying to stay relevant and stay in the hunt. They know they have a very small window of opportunity with Aaron Rodgers, so they're trying to make it work. And in the NFC, Washington, a team that I'm going to see this weekend, they are writing a really nice story with Jaden Daniels, the number 2 overall pick. Some guys just have the it factor, and you can tell that they are capable of handling their business and raising the level of their teammates in collaboration with their teammates. Daniels looks the part, he acts the part, he is the part. 6 games into his NFL career, he's already showed that he very much belongs. And if you're a Washington Commanders fan, you have a lot to be optimistic about down the road.
For sure, because the Commanders, like it's like they have their QB now after like many quarterbacks. I know Alex Smith was pretty good with them before, of course, the injury and all that. But it's good to see the Commanders. One of the storylines that's been shocking me is the Cowboys. They lost a lot of players already all season. Micah
Yep.
Parsons is hurt. Lawrence is hurt with an injury, and there's just a lot of like stuff going. I know they had a really bad loss to the Lions. I know the Lions have been continuing their surge to the top, and it's been really cool to see that through all the struggles and Thanksgiving and stuff.
Yeah, really like Detroit. What Dan Campbell has brought to that team, he's injected Jared Goff with confidence. They've built around it. There's a certain mentality that they've brought. They're no longer just a nice story. They're the real deal. They could easily go all the way, and I don't think anybody would be surprised at that. They came very close to doing it, as we know, last year. Dallas, a lot of drama, a lot of drama with that team, a lot of speculation with that team. The questions as to whether or not they're going to have to make a coaching change eventually, which most people believe they may with Mike McCarthy. Jerry Jones feeling a bit of the pressure of this team not living up to the expectations. That division certainly is winnable with Philadelphia taking a step back. Washington has surprised people, but nobody would have predicted Washington as a division champion. Meanwhile, Dallas can't win at home. Going into Jerry World used to be very tough and challenging for the opposition. And now all of a sudden, there is no real intimidation factor with their stadium. And that's a big issue. I think they're going to have to maneuver and navigate their way through a lot of landmines here this season. There are going to be a bunch of distractions. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to dismiss them. Maybe they get healthier. You mentioned it. If they can get their defensive stalwarts back, that's obviously going to help. But it just doesn't feel like they have nearly as much firepower on the offensive end as they've had in previous years.
They sure don't. Now the Jets. And back to like we were saying about the Jets, like they added Devontae Adams and they still have Garrett Wilson and the other and Mike Williams, so their receiving core is getting better. And then the Cowboys, of course, they got an older Ezekiel Elliott and
Yep.
lost Tony Pollard. So that was, and I know also Derrick Henry was rumored to go to the Cowboys because he lives there during the off season. So there's been a lot of like drama, yes, in the Cowboys organization around free agency and trades and coaching and stuff, for sure.
Yeah, and I think there's always going to be a lot of attention to the Cowboys because of where they are in the marketplace and the fact that they're guaranteed big ratings no matter what network, no matter what day of the week, no matter what night. The Cowboys are always going to be a team of interest. I think Jerry Jones probably, if he could get a redo this offseason, would take it. And the Derrick Henry situation that you just highlighted is a legitimate one. They are missing pop in that run game. They thought they could just get by, and it hasn't worked. They've had no balance this season. They just aren't as potent as they were previously. It doesn't mean they can't turn it around, but certainly now there's a bullseye on their back, and I think they're feeling the pressure of that.
Yes, and now with the trade deadline coming up, I like to ask, like, what are some like teams you expect to be buyers and then sellers at the deadline? Because I know NFL, it's not like baseball. There's not as much moves, but I know there's still buyers and sellers. So, what are some of your things you've been thinking about when it comes to the trade deadline?
Well, I think in the sellers column, it's not that hard to figure out the teams that look at the landscape and realize they're probably not going to be vying for anything. Las Vegas trades Devontae Adams. There is an acceptance that they're in a rebuild mode. Cleveland making their deal. I think there's an understanding that the season is not going according to plan. Pittsburgh is a team that I think could be a buyer. I do believe they feel like they need to upgrade their wide receiver core if possible. They probably need a veteran presence of some sort, and will look to see if there's someone out there that might fit the bill. I'll be curious to see with a team like Cincinnati where this season goes. Are they going to start winning and commit to it? They really can't be sellers because they're paying Joe Burrow a very large amount of money. The point for them is to win now. The fact that they're still dealing with a bunch of the contracts that they could not get done, Jamar Chase in particular, is a bit troubling, but that's usually how they handle it. The Burrow thing was more of an outlier for them where they just realized, hey, we don't want to mess around. We got to lock them up. But it's interesting too. Cincinnati had the benefit of paying Joe Burrow on what was his rookie contract initially. And that allowed them to make some other moves because they had flexibility salary cap wise. Houston's in a similar situation. They have one of the best QBs in the NFL on his rookie deal, CJ Stroud. Washington's going to be in a similar situation with Jaden Daniels. When you make the big contract move with a quarterback, that changes your whole cap approach. So you've got to take advantage of those years before you have to pay them the big money. And that's what we're seeing with a bunch of teams that have young, successful quarterbacks. You have to strike quickly in those years to try to surround him with the right amount of talent.
Yes, and with the NFL, like, even the Chiefs have proven like they can still play well without, like, yes, Rasheed Rice is really good, but a lot of the receivers are out and they're still finding ways to win. So it shows that you can still, like, and Pacheco, but the thing the Chiefs have been doing is they've been signing guys back like Kareem Hunt and
Yep.
Juju Smith-Schuster to try to fill in the production, which is always good because when those things happen, you got to make sure you have replacements or people that can come in to keep your team on top, which is really
Yeah.
important.
And I think the two examples you just gave are examples of teams that are comfortable with those players. They know the system, they know the culture. Kareem Hunt was successful in Kansas City, as we know, before he moved on to Cleveland. And they're getting him at a more bargain basement rate because he didn't have a lot of suitors. Same deal for Juju Smith Schuster. He is someone that understands how to run the stuff that they want to run. He already has previous experience with Patrick Mahomes, and they're not getting him at $10 million a year. They're getting him at a more discounted rate. And he wants to go back there, as does Kareem Hunt, because it could restart their careers. Someone else around the NFL might see their production and say at the end of this year, you know what? We got to give him a multi-year deal. He could really help us. So it's mutually beneficial in those situations. And that's why you see often New England Patriots did it a lot. Guys that would go elsewhere and then come back to New England. Bill Belichick would let the player go because he couldn't pay them what other teams were going to pay them. And then the relationship ended and he would say, come on back. You know the system. We trust you. You trust us. Let's go play some good football.
Yes, that is so true because the Patriots, they built a dynasty off of that. It was one of the many things they did to build a dynasty. So now what I wanted to go back on the sportscasting front and ask. So before I usually let you go and my guests go, I always like to ask professors like yourself, you have any advice for any young aspiring sportscasters like myself? I know we kind of went over this, but is there any more advice you'd like to give to people that are studying sports journalism and wanting to work in sports?
Yeah, the advice I would give you is twofold. One, you have to go do it. What you're doing right now is really important. Turn on your computer, turn on the camera, plug in a microphone every day, look into the camera, do a mock sportscast, do a mock interview, do a talk show, whatever it might be. Get comfortable doing this. That's the only way to improve. The other part, and this still applies to me all these years later, you have to be a student of this. That never ends. So you're always learning. You're always trying to figure out ways to improve. You're always trying to come up with a better way to do something or streamline your preparation. Every broadcast brings a new challenge. And that means when you're off the air, pay attention, watch other broadcasters, watch Sports Center, listen to your favorite talk show or podcast, watch old clips of play by play if you want to be a play by play announcer, watch other games, take mental notes. What do you like? What don't you like? How would you like to maybe incorporate it into what you do? And how can you polish your skills on a daily basis? And third, this would just be something in life in general, but certainly in the broadcast side. Take pride in how you present yourself and how you articulate. Even when you're not on the air, don't use the word like. Don't say you know. Don't and ah. Be smooth in how you speak. Be direct in how you communicate. Being eloquent in life is a good thing. Building a good vocabulary through reading, it's a good thing. And be well versed, not just in sports. Watch TV, watch movies, read books, listen to music, have a well rounded interest in pop culture, what's happening around the world, and don't have just tunnel vision on sports and only sports. It's important to be human. It's important to be able to relate to other people. And the only way to do that is to be well versed and versatile in who you are, multidimensional. You mentioned the word earlier, as a person, not just as a broadcaster.
Yes, that is so true, and that advice is really great, and I'll make sure to take it to heart.
Yep.
So honestly, thank you so much for coming on today, and it was great talking about the NFL and stuff.
All right, Quinn. Appreciate you. Nice to meet you virtually and wish you nothing but success. Good luck.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.